Hello and welcome back. Today we're talking about the potential demise of the European Union, and our next topic is the civil unrest. Who wants to start to talk about this topic? You think Andrew?
He must.
Right.
Start.
Well, we saw that chart that we just looked at,
Yeah.
and that is a really visual depiction of, without all of the other social and civil factors that are potentially, in my opinion, a kind of tinderbox waiting for somebody to strike the match and drop it. If you look at that particular chart that we just saw, that is a visual depiction of how the economy and the lead up to this potential demise of the European Union has manifested itself, and it's manifested itself in very, very, very large debt, including debts which are hundreds of times higher than what are known by Europeans as developing nations.
But I wanted to ask you, when do you think this debt can stop from rising? Because right now we can see that those countries continue, as you mentioned, to print more and more money. So when this going to stop? When are we going to see the major change in the European Union?
I think what we'll see is that you have now got a lot of nervousness. Switzerland, that was the first central bank, to actually pull the peg on the European currency. But that's because Switzerland's central bank, is a largely privately owned central bank. It's not nationalised. They have 50% private shareholders, so they're safeguarding their interests. Plus, Switzerland has always been, throughout history, the place in Central Europe which has never really been part of Europe, and manages to safeguard itself from any economic disaster. If you go back to 1933, 1933, Germany was in a very bad economic situation, to the point where it led to the Second World War, because the German population were promised by a socialist government that they would be brought out of this horrendous problem if they just did as they were told. And of course, because they're a very socialist way of living, they will obey their leader and do as they're told. And we all saw the result of that.
But right now we don't have this kind of a leader. So we do have.
We have the European Union, the European Commission, which is effectively an unelected, very large socialist organisation, which has a very big central government, mostly unelected. It's very expensive, and most satellite states of the European Union, member states of the European Union, the population there don't really concern themselves thinking about it, because they don't really concern themselves thinking about anything, as long as they can get their free money and their top-ups and social programmes and short working week, 30 hours, 35 hours in France. And you saw that the state of the debt in France is
the highest right
very
now.
high.
Wow.
Very high. And that used to be a manufacturing and engineering country.
What happened to France right now, for example? What changed? What caused this country?
French industry, which was always large, had a lot of state ownership when France was independent. So it had a socialist business model, but it was largely, the state owned a lot of the manufacturing industry and employed people on a 30-hour week. It also had a big agricultural sector. So it was successful as a government, but the public were happy to work 30 hours a week and have 2 months off in the summer.
And something changed.
They still want this. And now there is no money left to fund it because it's not sustainable. They cannot manufacture or produce.
So what will happen now?
What will happen now is that you have
the money runs out.
The money's out. The money already has run out, which is why you have banks leaving, the Swiss National Bank leaving. You have now potentially Barclays warning customers of volatility because of in case the euro drops in value. You have very little confidence abroad in the euro. If it drops off and the European Union fragments, what will happen is, never mind the commercial financial markets and the electronic trading sector, the average members of public who don't participate in this, which is the vast majority, it's not a financial markets oriented continent, not like America or Asia, certainly Asia. They will say, you promised me, give me. Where's my money?
But no one will be able to give anymore.
They will not. So as a result, we've already seen the start of some civil unrest. Greece, before, even 2 years ago, when the European Central Bank started talking about the Greek debt crisis, there was riots on the street of Athens all the time. And then 2 years ago in London, you had, not just London, the whole of Britain was on fire in August 2011, because there was effectively a situation where the government said, you're going to have to start paying back some of the debt.
So how can this situation can be avoided right now?
It can't be.
It can't be avoided.
Well, it
There's
can.
no way out for
Of course it can.
How do you think it
Okay.
can be avoided?
European citizens, please listen to our show and do something about it. Go out there and start work. Please, go and do it.
You think that's going to work?
Well, it
This is
depends
the only
where.
thing that will save the euro.
Right, but Greece already made their position very clear on that. They don't want to pay the money back. They want to carry on spending. They want to get their new government. They elected the Syriza party for that purpose. You have youth all over the United Kingdom rioting, and they actually blamed it. They went to the banks. They took to the banks and started throwing things at the banks.
Wow.
Because somehow they deserve money for free without having to repay it. And the thing is that the forex trading desks of banks, the hedge funds, the electronic trading sector knows this, so they're looking for business in other jurisdictions. China, for example, provides already. If you look at some of the Cyprus-based forex brokerages, it ranges from between 40% to 80% of the entire order flow for each particular broker just coming from China, and that's only a small proportion of Chinese business.
So the main problem right now is the education. The wrong education that the youth are receiving.
Yes, in a way.
Not only the youth, actually, as we can see, as you mentioned, even adults right now are used to getting money without any
It reminds me
paying back.
of Dire Straits songs. You remember Dire Straits?
Yeah, they had
What
a
song? Which
money
one?
for nothing,
Money for, and also
chicks for free.
right, and also Telegraph Road was about that too.
Yeah, exactly.
There was many of them.
What can change the Eurozone situation? What can do something different that we're not going to see the Eurozone entering a crisis?
The European Union will, if it disbands, there will be some countries that will not participate in the rebuilding of the financial sector. London will cut itself off from the European Union very likely, and it has enough of an established homegrown financial markets economy to be able to do banking business abroad with Asia, with the Middle East, with Russia and North America. You see, the mistake that they made in London a few years ago was not to go to the United States and form a trade partnership with that. Margaret Thatcher looked at that and was very much an advocate for it, but instead they formed it with Europe, which is very much not aligned with the British way of doing business. Now it's been too long, so you have a younger generation who are very much Europeanized, and they're used to having a system of where there's no real accountability for anything. They don't have financial responsibility because they don't consider themselves. So it's very hard for any company wanting to attract business to go to Europe and tell a retail trader that they can take their trading platform and they can deposit their own funds and start trade. My own money. Why would I do that? That's the thing. So now, when that lifeline runs out, you're going to have people who are. You promised me. I've been through university. They told me I'm entitled. Give me.
And this is why things are going to be a bit more complicated in the European Union.
Yes.
So we know Andrew's bottom line.
We know Andrew's bottom line, and I hope we're going to see a more optimistic future than what we're saying right now, although it looks like it's going to be complicated to see this kind of scenario.
Hard times for them coming up, I think.
The bottom line for me is still a mystery. I don't know. Maybe Andrew is right, with more than 50% is right, but I wonder if the same thing that happened in the US can happen in the euro as well, when they postpone the final the debt ceiling. So
It depends.
It depends.
It depends on whether any companies will invest there to start.
Exactly.
Because if you invest in Europe, you have got, let's say you're a new manufacturing industry or commodity. Let's say you talk about commodities. A lot of companies are now adding commodities to their trading platform. Commodities trading businesses in Britain, they won't go there. They won't go to Europe either because it's very expensive to operate. The taxation is in France and Britain 60 to 70% taxation. They're now talking about hitting if the Socialist Party gets in Britain in the elections in May. They are talking now about taking bonuses from all the top traders and taxing them to take them away from them. So, you have Rothschild Investment Bank is now this morning mentioned that they are going to possibly bring forward the bonus payments for this year to before the elections, just in case the Labour Party get in and take everybody's bonuses away from them. So the mistake is that America and the rest of the free world realises that people who are leaders of industry and heads of big businesses have choice. They're international people with businesses all over the world, and if you impose draconian, strict, harsh policies on them, like Denmark's potential capital control laws, which will stop Danish companies doing business abroad, like telling top traders in top FX desks in London they've got to give all their bonuses to the government to fund social projects for those who don't work in areas where the government doesn't invest in bringing new companies in, then they will just leave and they will go to Hong Kong and they will go to Singapore to work for the same company, by the way.
Yes.
So are we going to see a third world
No,
country
don't.
in Europe as a third
In
world?
places, yes, we are.
Yeah.
Because you're seeing an economy.
I don't like your guys' title,
Okay.
those titles.
I think that we are going to see a major crisis, but eventually we are going to see a recovery.
Okay, any bottom line that you would like to
I
add?
think that you'll see a vast disparity between certain regions and others, because it's not under the kind of European Union system. There has been an expenditure of unsustainable expenditure. We now see the huge debt, trying to make all these nations have the same standard of living, even those who don't really contribute much to it. And they've now come to expect it. And you cannot turn around to someone who is used to expecting that, because they outsource their responsibility to the government, to say, now it's your responsibility, you now have to work and pay that back. They won't. They would rather go and cause civil unrest and go up against it and say, you promised me, I expect. So what you'll see is greater disparities between regions where there is a developed financial markets economy. So you might see things like the British pound get back to being very much a highly desirable currency, not because of the rest of England, because the rest of England has gone the way of the rest of Europe. There's a lot of poverty. But in London, where there is a banking sector that transfers its order flow between Britain and the highly developing eastern nations, you might see the pound free itself up from the burden of the Eurozone, which I think really secretly a lot of the investing public would like to see.